Hello, everybody, and welcome to this EASPD webinar on hosting Ukrainians with disabilities, how to organize the process as service providers. Thank you for joining us today on short notice. Maya, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Tom. Correct. I'm still in Poland. As maybe some of you know, I've been having a really intense the last 2 weeks. I've been to Moldova, to Ukraine, to Poland, and tomorrow I'm also heading to Hungary because EASPD, since the beginning of the war, decided to open 6 temporary regional offices, the TROs, into the neighboring countries in order to assist refugees with disability to have a very clear information and way, and also to support the social services in the bordering regions, but also the social services which are not in the bordering regions but need information, relevant information. I have to say that the last few days, traveling to Chisinau, meeting with Ludmila, then traveling to Lviv, which is considered still the safe part of Ukraine, and seeing all of the people who are working on the spot and all their efforts has been really unforgettable experience, and really brings a lot of concrete ideas on what exactly needs to be done when it comes to how social services need to adapt and respond to this humanitarian crisis. It's been very intense, and I'm just happy that the network of EASPD has people very dedicated and very committed as you, and thank you for your efforts. Today's webinar will be very practical because I think that there is 2 main challenges. The first one in the beginning, that there was no clear information from Ukraine to the outside world. And right now that in a way there is so much information that people are trying to figure out exactly who to ask for what, where to go for very concrete information from both sides, both from Ukraine and then from outside of Ukraine. So today, this webinar will be very concrete, practical, sharing stories, advices, and questions on if you want to support people going out of Ukraine with a disability and you have a social service, what exactly can you do, what you need to adapt, what kind of support will you need, and what kind of support you can provide. So thank you very much for the people who on a very short notice managed to be here with us today. A special thank to Eric, who is having his day off, as I just realized in the intro of this webinar, but is still with us. Thank you for what you're doing. And maybe just a last partnership reminder, and thanks a lot to EDF for supporting us with a translation on this webinar, because this information is key not only for the social services around Europe, but also for people in Ukraine who will need this information in Ukrainian. So thanks to EDF for supporting us with, and Victor and Sasha as well for being here. Yeah, I would like to start. As I said, this is a practical information, so I will not have a long political speech on the importance of social services. As you're all part of the network, you're aware of that. Just the last sentence, I would like to really say that if you have any ideas and needs regarding and questions regarding on how you want to adapt your service in order to be responsive to what is happening, we'll be very glad to support you in that. Don't hesitate to write us back after this webinar if you have any concrete ideas or any questions which were not answered. So thank you very much for being here today. Tom.
Thank you, Maya. So I go straight to the experts of this session. We will have 4 speakers who will bring in their perspectives on what practically can be done to make sure people with disabilities from Ukraine are welcomed and hosted and in the right way. We will start then with Ludmila Malkochi from Moldova, from Keystone, Moldova. Ludmila, the floor is yours.
Yes, thank you very much. I would like just to share my screen. Okay. First of all, I would like to say that I will focus on delivering hotline and mobile team services to refugees with disabilities. I would like to say also in the beginning that it's a great pleasure to have all of you participating in this seminar, because it's a great occasion to share the expertise. These events are very new events for all of us, you know, and practically we are learning by doing, and the sharing the expertise is very important for all of us. A little bit of background information on Keystone Moldova, and I would like to share with you this background information because this information was a basis for our work in the field of supporting inclusion of persons with disabilities, refugees in Moldova. I would like to say that Keystone Moldova started its activities in Moldova in 2004, already around like 18 years. And our mission is social inclusion of persons with disabilities and other vulnerable groups. And our focus was mostly our target persons with intellectual disabilities and mental health. Keystone Moldova has expertise in deinstitutionalization, family reintegration, social services development, educational inclusion, labor inclusion, advocacy, and combating discrimination. And just several figures for you, I would like to say that during this period...
could I please request the speaker slow down? Could I please respect the host, ask the host to slow down the speaker?
Ludmila, you have to slow down when speaking, please. The interpreters are really struggling
it's virtually not possible. Thank you.
I would like just to share with you several figures. Practically, during our activities, we supported 600 people with intellectual disabilities and mental health, you know, to be deinstitutionalized and to move to community living, to be integrated in schools or to be integrated in jobs and so on and so on. And also we supported the government to develop around 170 community-based services like shared living, supported living, community homes, mobile team services, personal assistance services, and so on. During all our activities, our approach to assistance was, first of all, social role valorization theory, that people with disabilities have the right to live similar life and similar experiences that all of us are living in the communities. And practically, if you would like to support them, just you need to think, to start from that they have a valued life and they need to have a valued life like all of us has in their communities. Case management, it's a very important individual assistance plan that is based on assessment, individual assessment, and also it is very important the involvement of persons with disabilities through all this process, like assessment, development of individual assistance plans, implementation, and so on and so on. I would like to start first of all with one of, let's say, one of the first lessons learned, you know, during our activities. Practically, it is very important to focus on refugees with disabilities, but to have a proactive approach. And nobody will tell us what we shall do, how we shall do, whom we need to approach. We need to have proactive approach from the very beginning. And based on this, even from February, I think, when the war started and the UNHCR agency started activities in Moldova, Keystone became part of UNHCR interagency mechanism. And this is a very important, because being part of this interagency mechanism, you have, you know, access to information, you have access to everything is happening, like, you know, development of plans for refugees. You have access to donors that would like to support refugees. And from these perspectives, you know, you can, and you have access and you can integrate disability in all those activities. And this is the very important approach I would like to advise for all our non-governmental organizations. Based on this approach, we had the possibility to advocate for establishment of task force on disabilities. And Keystone Moldova is leading this task force on disabilities in the Moldova. The task force on disability is part of this UNHCR interagency mechanism. We have weekly meetings. we tried to develop partnerships with all NGOs in disability field from Moldova, and also with all donors interested in supporting persons with disabilities in Moldova. And practically based on that, we had also the possibility to develop a joint advocacy plan based on the most important problematic issue faced by persons with disabilities, refugees in Moldova. We also, based on that, developed a very good reference mechanism, because there are various types of NGOs in Moldova with different expertise and capacities. And practically, for example, one of these NGOs can support with adapted transportation. Keystone can support with nutrition packages and so on. And this helped us, to build all these pathway reference mechanisms and to support jointly persons with disabilities, refugees. In order to have our, let's say, persons in all UNHCR groups like protection, education, nutrition, and so on, we appointed focal points in all these groups. And now those persons have the possibility to advocate for integration of disabilities in all these sectors. And we have the possibility to now, everything is happening there, and trying to support persons with disabilities based on existing resources in the country. And also, I would like to say that all organizations in all NGOs from Moldova and donors developed some kind of pathway system with all the services that can be delivered to persons with disabilities, refugees. And practically this pathway system is helping us to refer persons with disabilities, based on their needs to the services that they need. It is very important also to ensure visibilities of NGOs in disability field, and we are reporting back to UNHCR every week. Even today, I developed this report, and also our report is published in UNHCR newsletter. And another suggestion and another, let's say, lessons learned. It is very important to build on existing expertise for service delivery. For example, in case of Keystone Moldova, we developed we are delivering a hotline services for persons with disabilities. And practically we extended this service for persons with disabilities, refugees. We had expertise in the field. We also had resources for this hotline service. And we also, through this UNHCR mechanism, we had some fundraising strategies. And now we have funds, for 6 months to deliver these hotline services for persons with disabilities. This hotline service was promoted through the ministry website, through the website of refugees, through the customs, and it was integrated in the UNHCR pathway. And also, in addition to this hotline service, we developed a mobile team service for persons with disabilities, refugees, to provide direct support. For both services, we use the same approach like we used for other services delivered for persons with disabilities in Moldova before this war. Practically needs assessment, individual assistance plan, social role valorization approach, and participation of persons with disabilities. And also we had some fundraising activities on our website, conferences, meetings with donors. We had some presentations at UNHCR meetings, and that helped us to raise the needed fund for nutrition packages, medications, and so on. Talking about the provision of the hotline services, you can see here practically what we are doing. We promoted it through the ministry website. We developed the database on existing services for persons with disabilities, refugees, because that is very important that counselors that are providing services 24 hours, 7 days, they need to have access to other services or to information about other services to provide this information to persons with disabilities refugees. And the hotline service is providing information services, psychological counseling, reference services and mentoring like supervision. That means that the hotline service is not just informing and counseling, but it is also mentoring and monitoring if the support was given and if the persons who is the beneficiary is satisfied with this support. And also we provided direct support services like nutrition packages, health care and medication, assistive equipment, furniture, and so on and so on. You can see on this slide the examples of services provided the last week, for example. The last week, we received like 11 calls from refugees with disabilities, from which 6 persons requested and received information on the contact of border police, cash assistance, and mobile team services. 1 person requested a functional bed for severe disabilities. Practically, we assessed the possibilities of all organizations in the countries that could support and practically didn't find this functional bed, and we referred to the Ministry of Health that has some functional bed in the hospitals. 1 person requested consultation of a psychiatrist for a child with autism, and the hotline referred the child to SOS Autism, that an NGO specialized in autism contacted SOS Autism and offered taxi services. 1 person requested food and medications, and 1 NGO offered food, and Keystone procured asthma medication. 1 person from shelter requested a wheelchair, and the counselor identified and provided a wheelchair, to this person. And also we contacted a shelter and identified other 11 persons with disabilities and developed a contact list. This contact list will be given to the mobile team for the needs assessment. The mobile team service is linked to hotline service and includes a medical doctor and a social worker. And the mobile team service has direct contact with face-to-face contact with persons with disabilities, because they are mapping persons with disabilities in shelters and through the phone calls with departments of social protection. They are assessing the needs of persons with disabilities and develop their individual assistance plan, and they are offering direct support to persons with disabilities refugees. And here you can see, like previous week, we assisted 37 persons with disabilities through this mobile team, and they received like nutrition packages, medication, particularly for mental health and epilepsy, personal medical equipment, like for example, for measuring blood pressure and blood sugar, equipment for kitchen. It's a problem with persons with disabilities that have, problems with their diet, and they cannot prepare their own meals, and we procured some equipment in order that they can prepare their own meals based on diet. And also provision of free gluten nutrition and assistive equipment like wheelchair. Challenges to be addressed. Despite of all those services that we are providing and this partnership that is very important among, national NGOs and international NGOs, and our collaboration with the government, I mean the Ministry of Labor and Social Protection, there are still challenges to be addressed. And we discussed about those challenges at our protection meeting today. First of all, one of the big challenges is transition of persons with disabilities, refugees to other countries and their accommodation in Moldova. In this case, still there is no donors to support with travel costs, with adapted transportation, and with accessible housing. There is a need for adaptation of shelters to needs of persons with disabilities. That means accessibility, adapted transportation, kitchen to prepare own meals based on diet. There is a need for accommodation of children with autism in hosting families. And here I would like just to share with you a very good news based on our advocacy. The International Organization on Migration told us today that they found a solution. They found money in implementing a project like based on Airbnb. They are finding houses for children with autism and families that have persons with severe disabilities. And I just informed today persons from NGOs in Netherlands that they were looking for 14 families with children with disability, with autism, to be evacuated in Moldova. I hope that this solution will work here in Moldova. And also one of the biggest problems is healthcare medication for persons with mental health and epilepsy. In Moldova, we have 40 mental health centers. They are providing diagnosis and they are providing like doctor support, but there is no one to provide money to buy medications. And this is a big problem because mental health is an urgent need. That is all I wanted to share with you. If you have questions, I will be very happy to answer. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ludmila. As always, a lot of information in a short amount of time. What I took from what you said was need to be proactive in finding solutions and not waiting for solutions to be found, because that won't happen. Partnering in particular with the UNHCR and other NGOs is crucial. Building on existing services and what your hotline services and mobile team services are doing is really very impressive. And what I didn't know much, but I thought was very interesting, was how your hotline services, they're a bit the spider in the web. You know, they're connecting people with disabilities and their problems with different solutions, and that's very, very interesting to hear. So thank you, Ludmila, for that, and I may come back later with some questions. Now I would like to pass the floor to Lukáš from Slovakia. Lukáš, how are you dealing with the situation in Slovakia?
Hello there. Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Hello. Hello to many. I think I knew several people from here, and I'm really happy to see you again. I'm sorry to be late. My excuse is that I'm from Slovakia. We are always late. What I would like to share is our limited experience, and it's very easy to go after Ludmila because she was so outstanding that now whatever I say will be just a small part of, or let's just look at what Moldova, and my head's off to what everything have you done and how much you are supporting people with disability. To introduce ourselves, we are a parent-based organization from Eastern Slovakia. We were established back in 1999, and we have this usual path of a parents-based organization with children growing, and we are founding more and more services. And at some moment, the leadership went from a caring mother to a very rude older brother, which is me. And now I'm pushing people more to being more independent and somehow taking more responsibility for themselves, which of course then goes not always to results which we would like to see, but I think it's very similar to many of the post-communistic countries. The story, which is kind of usual, was of course changed in February 2022 when Russia attacked Ukraine, and our only qualification for doing what we are doing is that we live close to the border. And we somehow were realizing that after the first wave of people from Ukraine fleeing, which were people who were usually also somehow rich, somehow able to realize that this will be bad. And after second wave of people who are not that rich, but are able to move easily, after these two waves, there will be a wave of people who are similar to people who we support and have some kind of special needs. And we started, I would say, to be active in 3 areas. One is to organize some kind of partnership. We knew that we are a small organization. We won't be able to accommodate so many people, not to mention that we are a transitory region, a transitory city. So people will be coming to us, staying for a few days and leaving. The other part was our work on a national level in respect of getting partners together, how to somehow get together to be able to help. And then the third area is the help in respect of the international convoys. The first one was something which we were more or less, Slovakia is 5 million people, so it's rather small, and in social area everybody knows everyone, so that's not something which would be problematic to make a Skype late in the evening and somehow put people together. What we started to do is we somehow created a flow chart, which is still active, and we put maybe 12 or 15 partners together. You will be doing this, you will be doing that, you will be responsible for transport, you will be responsible for this and for that. I think looking back that we just spent too much time creating the flow charts and making more and more addition of that and the changes, because at the end, very often the flow chart was not used in the field work. Very often even the employees of the partners said, well, the director wants that, but we will do it our way. So very often we just ended up using our personal relationships to do something and to get something done. And I do not think that's bad. Yeah, I think if you are very structured and you will wait forever to get the process 100%, you won't be able to help almost anyone, because we spend really 3 or 4 weeks preparing to get ready. In the meantime, we were helping on the personal level. We were getting calls from the border. The problem is that whenever your phone number will get circulated, then that will have no end. Yeah, and we were dealing with situations from there is a person needing a kidney treatment to there is a person in need with disability on the border. What paid off was just to go through the centers, agree on some kind of because we have only 3 crossings with Ukraine, so it was 3 points of reference where we were able to establish good relationships. We were able to help some people that, okay, we want to cross, this is the way. What helped us that at some moment there was a national response to this crisis, where national collection and the national offering was done, and we were able to work with them in an expert level. Yeah, that they were getting all the calls, all the queries from the help. And in the moment they were not able to help, they were saying, well, Lucas, this is too specific. They were able to reach out to us. Also, if we were searching for accommodation, we were able to somehow transfer it to their databases, saying that, okay, if you have a database, search that. That's another keyword for me, that everyone in this situation came up with the idea, well, first of all, we have to create a database. And instead of helping, we were creating databases, which after 1 week are no more updated, because if somebody says, I'm able to do this, if you call them after 2 weeks that, well, you offered this help, well, that was 2 weeks ago. So I do understand the need of systemic approach, and I do understand why people in the moment of chaos are trying to organize their lives by making the databases. I'm just saying that a huge amount of work went into, I would say, maybe 10 different databases, which at the moment do not serve to nothing, because they are no more being updated. At the moment, what we are doing, we are able to help on the more or less individual basis. The flow of refugees from Ukraine went very, very down. And that's another, I would not call it a problem, but it's a challenge for us how to plan the future, in the sense that we do not know how many people will need our help. Should we be preparing for 10 people with disabilities coming every day? And if we spend 2 hours on each case, should we hire another person for that? Or there will be no one coming with disability, because thanks be to God, the situation in the Western Ukraine got somehow standardized. And so that's something which is also a problem for a state, that it's extremely difficult to plan it. And many of our ideas, many of the plans were not used at all, because, and it's a good thing, but still it changed the situation. The flow of the people from Ukraine declined. But the other thing which is happening now is that the state took over many of these initiatives, which we were asking for we were saying, okay, systemic approach, whatever. But this is not the good news. Yeah, state doesn't really care. So what we are doing is a shadow work in the sense that state took over, but in the meantime, we keep our relationships, we keep our contacts, we keep in touch with those people for in case there is someone who is forgotten, for in case there is someone who actually needs some extra help. So if that happens in your family, in your countries, I would suggest not finish everything, but to be prepared that, especially in Slovakia, this is not really working so well. What state was able to do, and we were very helpful with, was to change so many rules and so many laws, so it would be easier for the organizations working with people with disability to help. Yeah, and we were able to pinpoint the areas where the state needs to change the rules, so it would be possible for us to use the state money to be able to help. And that was easy for them because they'd only changed the laws. Now when the practice came, that's more problematic. What we are doing now, after I would say maybe 2 or 3 weeks of relative peace, we are now establishing the contracts, maybe I think last week, as a national network with the International Organization for Migration, with UNESCO and EASPD, that okay, what's the next step? And we will again, I think we'll be using personal relationships to reach out to the centers of with refugees. Is there anyone with special needs there? Yeah, and I think that's the way that we are able to use the personal capital we have after the years of work to be somehow also able to guarantee the trust. Yeah, you send us the funds, you can trust us, we will be using them well. So that would be individual cases where my only warning would be, we started to work in the way that we are only getting more active in helping after 2 or 3 days. In the sense, if the person needs acute medical care, for that we have hospitals. If the person needs social services, let them stay somewhere for 2 or 3 days, even if that's some kind of a refugee camp. Use your personal relationships to speak to the leader of the camp to have one special needs tent. But we spend a huge amount of energy on helping people who after 1 day said, well, nothing is working in Slovakia and I'm leaving now, which is slightly frustrating, and it's then damaging the reputation for the future cooperations because people are saying this is useless. And so what we established, that we have a nice accommodation close to the border. People, whoever can go there for 2-3 days, up to 5. And within these 5 days, we are trying to start asking how to help, instead of spending 24 hours on the calls and then hearing that, well, actually I have a brother in Switzerland and I'm moving there, which is great, but we didn't need to spend so much time trying to help that person. In respect of the national initiatives, we were very active in the beginning. We were able to change several laws, and now we are reactivating the network in the sense that having the cooperations ready with the international organizations, we are able to formulate the offer, because to never-endingly discuss who can do what, that's just a waste of the time. Yeah? So we are trying to be very specific. We are able to do this, yeah, and we are searching who is able to do that. Especially in us being the smaller countries, it's easier to organize that because the number of actors is limited. And then there is the third area, which is a huge pain for us in the sense of that we are able to see the suffering and we are not really able to help so much. And there's the International Convoys. We were contacted by many organizations that we are a disability orphanage, we are a disability home. Please help us to flee the war. And we were actively trying to do so. My first warning would be, we establish a system when in the first moment we are asking for the direct contact with the director of the convoy or somebody who is in the direct contact with this director of the convoy. If not, then you will be we were getting a huge amount of requests for help, which were multiplying the same 7 organizations trying to help the same convoy.
I think we lost Lukasz for a bit. Maybe we will come back to him when he comes back. Dimitri, can you be on the lookout for Lukasz, if that's okay?
Yes.
Okay. We heard many interesting things from Lukasz. Again, partnership is important. Second point, Lukasz, you're back.
Yeah, okay, I'm sorry. It looked for me that you all were kind of frozen, but I was thinking that I'm speaking so interestingly.
No, we lost you for about 1 minute. We lost you exactly when you were talking about direct contacts with convoys, with the directors of the convoys. You're muted, Lukasz.
Unmute. I'm sorry. It's also writing to me that my connection is unstable. Maybe I will turn my video off. To maybe. Hopefully it will be better. So if it was very painful for us to be in direct contact with the convoy itself. Very often they do have a contact person, and we are dealing with them. But we do not accept. We do not start working on something if that's only a Facebook share or somebody heard from someone and so on. But very often these people do not know what's actually needed, and that would be my warning. That be careful with your energy, because it will be used very soon. And I do understand that these groups are approaching many different organizations at the same time. But then the result is that the same thing is being done in the four different countries, and that's why it's so great that EASPD is trying to put the national coordinators, and we are able to then maybe double check: are you dealing with this, or are you not dealing with that? We are not so successful with the answer from our ministry, who is only waiting for the, I would say, emergency situations, in the sense that, okay, once they will be here, then we will react. Yeah, so that's why we again are creating shadow structures, in the sense that, okay, let's get people from the war, because that's the only trigger when our ministry, the Slovak Ministry of Social Affairs, will be pushed to the corner to do something. The last thing to this is that once these people will come to us, and that's something which I would like to suggest, is to create some kind of a relocation network, that in the moment when they are already still in the Ukraine, we will be knowing that, okay, they will be staying for us maybe for 1 week to get somehow accommodated, but we already know where are they going. Because we had a case when we were hosting, it was not such a big group, so it was not that expensive, but to be hosting a group of approximately 25-30 people, and in that moment start looking, okay, where could I relocate them to? That was slightly stressful, as my contact in Western Slovakia put them in the rather expensive hotel. And that was, okay, day by day was 800 euros. Okay, so that's something which would be very helpful to us. And that would allow us to formulate the offer that we have a contact somewhere in Germany, Netherlands, or countries which are not exactly on the border, for the group of 20, 40, 80, I don't know how many, and we are able to help you to get to Slovakia, to get you some support in Slovakia, and get you further. Yeah, for many of these things we have some money, especially for the transport, as Slovakia understood that if Slovakia will be helpful in transporting these people to the Western Europe, then we will not need to take care of them for several months. And I'm saying that bluntly, because that's how it is. But all these activities, I would say, stopped within the last 3 weeks, as also the Ukrainian state is, I would say, I understand they are busy with other things, but that was another level of problems. Yeah, that their public administration was not really not really that responsive. And even when we found a place for a group of 110 people, this was then not used because Ukrainian government asked for so many guarantees, which I could understand Austria was not ready to offer. The size of the groups is also a question. Ukrainian homes are very big, and Western countries' homes are usually smaller. So we had to start to manage the expectations, that in the sense that no, you will not stay together. We will be happy if we will be able to put you in the one area, let's say Western Austria, but you cannot ask us to relocate you from your home to another home, because there is no place for 140 people with the disability, with, I don't know, 40 wheelchairs and 27 beds. And so that was also something. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lukasz. Lukasz, I'm not sure.
It's both, it's okay.
Thank you for what you said. I think quite clear recommendations there. Partnership again is important. Not relying or not spending too much time on structures. I mean, that has an advantage maybe on long term or medium term, but on the immediate term, finding solutions, it's a lot about personal relationships, and it's what we're also seeing here. Making sure that even when the state takes over, public authorities take over, to keep the partnership open, because many of the practical solutions will still be done at that stage. Important for the state to change their laws and rules to help make it easier. The importance of managing expectations, knowing your role, knowing your size, and also knowing what Ukrainians expect from when they arrive in your country, what they want to do, and so forth. And then when it comes to international convoys, being in direct contact with the convoy itself, with the director, or with a member of staff. And then when it comes to organizing the relocation, we need to really have a better network, better planning to make sure it happens in practice. So I've tried to cover all of that, and I'm sure maybe we can come back to you later with a few questions.
Indeed, thank you.
But please, before that, we will then move on to our third speaker. Eric, you're based in the Netherlands, so a bit further away from Ukraine, but still you've been doing amazing work in hosting people with disabilities and their families. Eric, can you tell us a bit about the work you've been doing and how it's happened?
Yeah, thank you very much, Tom, for this wonderful opportunity to share our experience here in the Netherlands. A few words about Soft Tulip, my organization. It's an NGO created by Dutch care organizations for people with disabilities, for people with mental health problems, and for elderly. And it was created already in 1991 and active in Ukraine since 2006, with the aim of supporting disability organizations to improve the quality of life of the people with disabilities and people with mental health issues and elderly. So we are working since 2006 in Ukraine. And that was in this whole crisis, in this whole terrible situation, turned out to be really something useful, helpful, to have a network in Ukraine. A network of disability organizations, of parents organizations, of daycare centers, early childhood intervention centers, faith-based organizations, network with local, regional, also national government of Ukraine, and that whole network is still very helpful to identify the people with the refugees with a disability that need to find a good solution for their situation, and to organize the transport from Ukraine to the Netherlands. And the good thing on the other side in the Netherlands is that we are a network of service providers. So and these service providers have been working in Ukraine since 2006. So there are a lot of relationships, and there's a lot of connection between the staff of those organizations, but also the CEOs and Ukrainian organizations. So that turned out to be very helpful. So our situation is because of that a bit quite different. we have been able already in the second week of the war to identify groups of people that were already brought people with disabilities, refugees with a disability, and their caregivers, to identify them and to look for ways of how to get them out of Ukraine. Or some groups already were in Poland but got stuck. There were no services for them in the refugee centers. There are no specific facilities for people in wheelchairs, for example. So that was a very problematic situation, especially in the first few weeks of this terrible war. And we have been able, with the support from faith-based organizations, sometimes in one case the regional government of Vinica, to bring groups of people with disabilities and their caregivers to the Netherlands. It was a real intensive, and it is a very intensive job to do, because it requires a lot of coordination. First of all, within Ukraine, of course, then to bring people to the border and over the border and from the border from Poland to the Netherlands. In Ukraine, we have been approached right from the start by these different organizations. So an evangelic rehab center where we have provided training in the past contacted us, that they had a group. The National Assembly of People with Disabilities, they contacted us, please help, we have here a group of 41 people and 45 initially. They need to go. They are from Luhansk. They are from all those names, from the different war zones, and they have no place to go. So that message was very strong, and I could transfer the message to the Dutch care organizations, and you know, they just decided, okay, we go for it. We will find places. This is a crisis situation. It's an emergency situation. We need to improvise. There was no script. There was no experience previously on how to do this, how to organize this. But because of this incredible motivation, the soft tulip care organizations themselves, but also their colleagues, their colleagues from their network, immediately started to renovate facilities that were empty, that were not in use, facilities suitable for bigger groups, for people with disabilities, and to renovate them, to refurbish them, to decorate them again with a lot of volunteers from the neighborhood, from the staff, from sometimes also housing corporation, to make the spaces ready to receive the refugees. In the meantime, we had to organize the transport of the convoys. What was important that we already had a list of participants in those convoys, so we could look for the best possible solution to house those, to provide housing for these the people according their needs, but also what was mentioned by Lucas, also according the size of the group. Most groups are about 40, 45 people, and indeed it is difficult to find one care organization that has such a big facility to give home to all of them. And some groups also had special needs, like there was one group of people with blind or badly sighted people who also needed special housing services. And we could find a Dutch service provider who could provide the housing for this group as well. So what we did was matching, okay, according to the needs, the size of the group, and what kind of facilities we could find in the Netherlands. That whole idea created the necessity to make really a coordination point. I did it initially, but that was far too much work. So my board decided to contract an additional person for a few days a week, and two volunteers, and they started to organize all the different facilities in the Netherlands to give them the right information. So we created a script with useful information, with what to for care organizations, what to expect, what to do, with good important links to information about regulations, about financing, etc. So for this we created what we call Soft Tulip for Ukraine working organization, and so it's an information center for care organization. It provides the matching between facilities and the support needs of refugees, and we do that in communication with the National Association of Service Providers. Like EASPD is that on the European level, we have a Dutch Association of Service Providers. And through that association, we could find other care organizations that also wanted to give home to refugees with a disability. And what turned out was that nobody was prepared for this emergency. So it was really hard to find out what kind of regulations were active and effective for the refugees from Ukraine. In the Netherlands, Ukrainian refugees do not have to ask for asylum. They are considered citizens of Europe. They can stay for at least 6 months. And probably that will be extended for a longer period. So that we have regulations for asylum seekers, but not for this group. So it was really difficult, and we have a very complicated care system regarding the financing of the different services. Long-term services, medical services, social services, education services, of course, allowances. It was totally unclear, and it's still up to today. There are quite some discussions going on. So what we did was, as Soft Tulip for Ukraine, was looking for the coordination with our ministries, Ministry of Health and Social Welfare and Ministry of Justice, to get in contact. And the last months we had weekly meetings with them about, okay, what regulations were really working for the refugees, but also for the care organizations, where could they bring in the bill for all the costs they made, because they provided the care, the food, they refurbished the facilities. They invested a lot of money in that. So it's, now there is this struggle of who's going to pay the bill. So will it be the care organization, will it be the municipality, or will it be the national government? So that's a fight still going on. So what can I say more? Yes, of course, the Netherlands as a country decided to receive for the moment at least 50,000 refugees from Ukraine. And our groups of the people with disabilities, they should fit in that national program. And in the beginning it didn't. We just brought in groups and we gave them housing. Then we said, oh, we have to discuss this with the municipality or with the regional government. And now it is different. Before we can provide housing, we need to have the approval from the municipality. So it takes a bit longer now to have the approval, but yet this is very important to have this good agreement with the local government, because they at the end of the day are very much responsible for the stay of the refugees in their municipality. What we discovered, for example, an issue is the security. When you have a bigger group of people in a facility living, the whole situation need to be organized. You need location management, but you also need security, because what we experienced was there's a lot of enthusiasm in Dutch society. So a lot of volunteers came into the buildings, they wanted to help, but that created chaos and even some problems also because of language and cultural misunderstandings. And in several cases, we had to ask the municipality to pay for security people who could control who's going in and who's going out, also to prevent any other problems with criminals or people with bad intentions trying to get in. So, but that's also who's going to pay for that. And of course, the care organization doesn't have a budget for that. Soft Tulip doesn't have a budget for that. So that should be done on municipal level and even on the national level. So that is really a struggle. People who arrive need additional care. Not all, but because very important for us is that people with disability with their caregivers. We cannot provide 100% care, 24/7 care. That's impossible. So we only can receive people who are with their caregivers. But yet still there are several other issues. Medical aid, medical care need to be provided. And there we discovered also interesting things like people with epilepsy. It was mentioned before that medication that people bring from Ukraine is even forbidden in the Netherlands. It's not allowed to provide that kind of medicines here. So there's a whole quite complicated process of finding solutions for the medication of the people. But that is provided not by the care organizations, but by medical care service providers, so general practitioners in general. That's another problem we face, the problem of medication. There's also for people with the mental health issues. The medicines they bring are not used in the Netherlands, so that also is quite bringing some complication. Last point, what is important, it just came to us, but yes, it's important, the publicity. The use of the social and the regular media. The media here jumped quite a lot on Soft Tulip and on me, but we found out it was very important for fundraising, to get some additional support, both for the care organizations and for Soft Tulip, to get more support from other care facilities. So that was all very important. So to finalize this in 3 week time, we organized the 400 places, 400 refugees with a disability and with their caregivers in 16 different care organizations in the Netherlands. Unfortunately, we are full now. We had 400 places and they are full, and we are now looking for new and more places in the Netherlands. So thank you.
Thank you, Eric, also for describing it's difficult to say success, but still, it's a success in terms of the people that you've managed to help. And I think we're also far ahead other countries in terms of what they've done as well. And a lot of that is down to Soft Tulip, so thank you for that. I think, again, what we learned here is in some ways individual commitment, the commitment of people to really organize that. Staying passive, waiting for the state to do something is not the way to create real solutions on the short term. Your advantage, Eric, also in some way advantage, is that you know also very well the Ukrainian context, you know the partners, you know how to set it up, and that was obviously easier, and that's what also EASPD is trying to do, is to help create those contacts between different networks with Ukrainian organizations. Coordination in Ukraine is important, on the border is important, and also in the Netherlands or other countries a bit further away from Ukraine. And how you organize these coordination points is volunteers. I think the more successful countries, they have coordination centers organizing this, dedicated people, professionals, and money has been put in. Of course, who pays, etc. is a thing, but what I'm trying to see is countries who actually organize themselves as individuals to do it are often more successful. Of course, that has to be done hand in hand with local authorities, especially building it up over time. And I think the last point you said is working with social media and press. It's important to build fundraising. It's also important to spread the message and to try and access more people. So thank you for that. And of course, there's no script to what you're doing. You're learning as you're going, but that's often the more successful way to do it in these cases. Thank you. I will then now move on to our last speaker, Gunta Anka, who we know a lot from the European Disability Forum, but she's also very active in Latvia with Sustento. Can you please tell us, Gunta, the work that you've been doing in Latvia?
Yes. Hello, everybody, and thank you for inviting me to be part of your webinar today. And quite a lot of has been said already by my colleagues from other countries, but still I'd like to add a bit more information about the way how we are working here in Latvia. We are, I would like to start with the idea.
Mr. Host, could the speaker be closer to the microphone? There's a huge echo. Now, the sound quality is not good. Could you have microphone closer?
I can try like that. Is it better now?
Yeah, no, it's just the microphone could be closer to you because.
Yeah, okay.
All right, thank you.
So the idea is that we are quite happy because in this very difficult situation, we have two really good contacts. From one side, I am working together with a representative of Ukraine government, and she, Tatiana Barantsova, and she is the person responsible for disability issues in administration of Ukraine government. So she knows everybody in Ukraine and everything about Ukraine, which gives us a direct possibility to be involved in those things which are going on in Ukraine. From other side, as Tom already said, I'm active in European Disability Forum, which gives us the possibility to be in contact with different European countries to organize help and support to those people who need it in different countries, not only in Latvia. So it's some kind of links to two sides. It helps us because from Ukrainian side, if people are saying, or a group of people are saying that they are going to evacuate, so in different administrations of local municipalities, we can provide them evacuation, which is supported by local police. Something like they are following them and helping them to go faster, because as you know, there are many cars on the streets on the way to go to Poland or to other borders of European Union. And after that, in European Union, I can go to different countries. Like, for example, if I organize a way to Latvia, I go to my colleagues in Poland and said, people are coming, could you arrange a place for them for one night accessible to stay? Then I can go to my colleagues in Lithuania and say, people are coming, could you arrange for one night place to stay? And then we can receive them in Latvia. What about receiving in Latvia? The biggest problem, as you said already, is the accommodation of those people, because there are not so many accessible places for accommodation, and that is a problem in my country too. So how we managed? We managed by having short time accommodation, which is for 3, 4, 5 days, which is fully accessible in different centers, so people can stay there. They can get everything they need, for example, to eat, to drink, to go to the toilet, just very simple but very important, to have a good bed and so on. And then we have some times to find a way where they can go and the place where they can stay for that moment. Because otherwise it's very, very difficult in a very short time, in a few hours, to get a basis for them, especially because we like in Moldova, we also have this hotline phone. And so it's quite normal that you get a call from somebody sitting somewhere in a station or a nearby bus by saying, hi, I'm in Riga. I'm so tired, I'm coming by my cat and friend. I'm on a wheelchair and let's help me to go somewhere. So that's the first part. Of course, we have accessible transportation for those people who need to go somewhere. And that is the first one and very important part in the beginning. Like a next step, it's a medical care, which is very important too. In order to get a medical care, people need to get a registration with GP. And I don't know about your country, but in my country, it takes at least 1 week. It's a very optimistic prognosis, but it's about 2 or even 3 weeks time. And for many people with disabilities, it's a very difficult time because they do need these medications. They do need the medical help, not in 3 weeks, but just now. That's why we have agreement with few hospitals in Riga and other parts of Latvia to provide them medical care, and we are just paying for that. So we are asking for donations and use that money to pay for the medical care till the moment a person can get it for free as from the budget, because it takes time. The other important issue, of course, is the wheelchairs or different technical equipment for people, because as you know, many of them are coming even without wheelchairs, just because they have to put it, left it somewhere, and they can't take it with them. So we are, again, the situation is that there is possibility to get the technical equipment in Latvia, like everybody else in Latvia can get it, but we still need a bit time to get it in Latvia. And so it means that we have a special kind of renting system, so they can rent all kind of wheelchairs or all kind of other equipment they do need for a moment when they get their own from Latvian government, because it could take maybe 1 month or even maybe 2 months, and it's not possible for people to be without technical equipment for such a long time. Those are the most practical things. We have a very good cooperation with our Ministry of Welfare or social issues. For example, last week we had a group of 141 persons for psychoneurological institution in Ukraine coming to Latvia, and we just putting them in different places in Latvia, so they're like a part of getting our social services provided by government. If the individuals are coming, they are coming to different places, and we providing them flats to stay there. That is the way. At the moment, I hope for tomorrow or maybe the after tomorrow, we'll have a special kind of web page on internet only about the support what people with disabilities can get in Latvia. Because at the moment we have special pages for refugees but there is no information for people with disabilities. So we are going to provide a special web page with all information we can manage ourselves. And the link of that web page will be put it in a general page of the people of refugees, so they can easily click on it and get all kind of information they do need. We of course have this hotline, as I said before, and we have special cards with a number giving to refugee center, giving to ministries, giving to local municipalities, so people can find out about it. And we also have information on our social media like Facebook and Twitter and so on. So it's a very, very practical work what we are doing. And one more thing what we are doing together with donors from Latvia, we arrange a refugee center in Lviv in Ukraine, because the way to go through the Ukraine, it takes about 3-4 days. It's a very, very long way for them to go. And there is no possibility to go out of the car. There is no possibility to go to the bathroom. So those people desperately need a place to stay for a while, to get a rest for a while. And so we arrange 150 places in Lviv, which is special center. We provide them with beds, with mattresses, and with all kind of hygiene and medical. And now every 2 weeks we are sending more humanitarian aid to the center to provide different needs that they have at this moment for those people who are staying there for 2 nights, 3 nights sometimes, to continue their way to Europe. And now, together with European Disability Forum, we are going to start the same center in Uzhhorod. Yeah, that's it. Maybe in a very short way.
No, thank you, Gunta. Very, very practical learning from what you're doing. In particular, the issues around accessing, let's say, existing public or social services, medical services, etc., and the delays that takes for these people is too long, and we need to fast track that process. And organizing that, again, sharing information with people with disabilities is crucial here. We have around 10 more minutes for any questions. So if you have any questions, can you maybe raise your hand in the reaction box at the bottom of your screen, and I will try and then come to you if you have any questions. No questions from anybody? I'm trying to find. No. There's a question in the chat box from Megan, who is asking, do we know the proportion of all the people leaving Ukraine that have intellectual disabilities? Maybe Gunta, EDF, does EDF have any data around that?
I don't think we have those data. We know that there are 2.7 million people with disabilities, but it will be quite difficult to know exactly how many people with intellectual disabilities. And of course, we have the same problem what you already said, that many people are using very strange kind of medicine. And many of them, they came just with medicine for sleeping, like a sleeping aids, and yeah, it takes time for us to manage with that. Yeah.
Thank you, Gunta. I mean, what we hear from Inclusion Europe, so it's the network representing people with intellectual disabilities and their families, is that most people with intellectual disabilities are staying in Ukraine. And so, although today we are talking more about people who are leaving Ukraine, that doesn't mean, I mean, that's not most of the people. Still, most of the people today with intellectual disabilities and their families are staying in Ukraine. And so that's, I think, another topic for another day and something we need to tackle as well. I can see, Matilda, you've raised your hand. You were in Ukraine recently, but you're also very active in Italy. Do you have a question?
Thank you very much. It's a question for Eric. Eric, you mentioned that you've been able to secure 400 people, all with the families. So maybe children or people with disability and caregivers. But I think that the big issue is how can we think or plan as external countries to host some thousand of people who were in the institutions and who are without family. And we received a request from our meeting. There are more than 3,500 people who have been in institution for more than 30 years. They are completely non-independent. And, you know, for the convention that we all ratified in our countries, we cannot host like 200 people in one institution. And I wonder whether you had any thought with your institution, what should we as neighbor countries do? Or is there any coordination for these people who are without caregivers, they are not independent, and they need their assistance, and most probably their institution has been destroyed?
Yes. Until now, I haven't received any requests for providing housing for those institutionalized people. I'm very aware of the problems in Ukraine, of the institutions. We work very much on the theme of deinstitutionalization. We have weekly meetings with the Department of Social Policy in Zakarpattia region. And what they informed me is that their facilities, the existing facilities, are now filled up with those clients from internats, as they are called in Ukraine. But they are full now, but until now they have been able to provide housing within Ukraine. That's my understanding. When it would come such a request, then we do have a big problem, because we do not have such a facilities anymore in the Netherlands. We have very few intensive care homes for, especially in mental health sector, for very severe cases, but we do not have those closed institutions, and we cannot guarantee, as I said during my introduction, the full care of people. They should come with some kind of caregivers. So yeah, that is a serious problem. We simply do not have the solution for that. We do not have the facilities. We do not have the type of care provision that is needed for that. We do not have that anymore in the Netherlands. So, but until now, what I know from my meetings with the Zakarpattia Department of Social Policy, they are solving the problem within Ukraine for the moment.
Thank you, Eric.
If I can a bit add, maybe.
Yes, Gunter, please come in, and then maybe Victoria can come in afterwards.
Yeah, there is a kind of political agreement that mostly all institutions or internats, as they said, are going to stay in Ukraine or in the safe parts of Ukraine. We are in a good cooperation with Vinnytsia, where more than 900 people are now in an institution which is for 100 persons. And they asked us for more medicine and support. But still, we have some institutions which are evacuated. The one we have here in Latvia, I know that Italian Red Cross evacuated quite many institutions to Italy. And at the moment, I also just get information from Moldova when they are asked to evacuate one institution to Moldova. So mostly they are inside the country, but still some of them are going out. And it is a big problem because many of them coming without support persons. So we had 140 people with only one social worker, and you know, it's a really difficult situation. Yeah.
I would like just to add here, definitively, we got a request, from 80 people with disabilities from residential institutions to be evacuated to Moldova with 60 staff. And practically they are, we requested like more information from them, what kind of disability do they have, my understanding is that they have severe disabilities because the proportion is like about 1-to-1, the staff to a person with disability. But this also will be a big issue for Moldova because we are in the end of this deinstitutionalization process, and also many institutions have been closed, particularly for children. We have several institutions for persons with mental health, but they are they are full, and we also tried to deinstitutionalize people from those institutions during the last year. Thank you.
Thank you, Lumina. Victoria has been politely waiting to come in, so I will ask her to come in first. I think she might be speaking in Ukrainian, so please put your interpretation on, and then Lucas, I'll come to you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Thomas. Greetings, everyone, dear colleagues. On behalf of our community of the National Assembly of Persons with Disabilities of Ukraine, let me greet you all and express our gratitude for the enormous efforts you have been investing. Evacuation is a very intensive effort, I would say. We work with individuals in the first place, and in the course of war, persons with disabilities who normally before the war stayed in one region or sometimes in one facility, for them it's so difficult to make this decision to move out, let alone to move out of the country. We've been working with so many organizations and people for many years, and I can say that over 1,000 persons with disabilities left the country. So as for all the issues you were mentioning today, including legal issues, healthcare issues related to evacuation of persons with disabilities, are very, very important. We, being an organization of persons with disabilities, are trying to organize coordination of the evacuation efforts. There are a lot of barriers, all kinds of barriers, including mental barriers, including a language barrier. There are so many European countries hosting persons with disabilities, which means there are a lot of languages to speak. And they all, so many of them have issues with transportation, with accessibility, and so on. So let me say on behalf of our organization that we are open for cooperation with every partner we can find, and we have to work together. We have to make this kind of coalition of organizations who are actively working abroad. And this is a way for us to shape this kind of agenda or effort, and to work together. Sorry, I am really stressed here, but I believe that everything is going to be fine. We will manage. Thank you.
Thank you, Victoria. Thank you also to Nadu for really everything you're doing in Ukraine for people with disabilities. It's incredible the work that you're doing, and so thank you for that, and also the cooperation we have. Before we're getting to the end of the seminar, but maybe Lucas, you want to come in last, and then we will conclude.
I have only 2 points. As originally by education, I'm a lawyer, so exactly this was happening in our case, that when we were trying to evacuate the convoys to Western countries, and we found a place, and it was great space because it was wheelchair accessible. Then the Austrian government stepped in and warn the owner of the space that if you will be hosting these people, this will be qualified as an illegal providing of social services. And that's something which I think, Eric, you did in kind of guerrilla style, that, okay, we brought them in and then we'll see what happens. But that's also another point which I think it's important to, if you want to be successful, to somehow ignore it, in the sense that, okay, something needs to be, some help needs to be provided, but we need to be aware of it in the sense that also the owner of these spaces, even if they are not operating now, are then legally responsible for whatever happens in these spaces in respect, for example, with the fire hazard and so on. You know that fire is one of our biggest enemies. And for example, in the case of our convoy, that was the reason why it didn't work out, because we were not able to somehow lift this responsibility. Another point was with the even in the case the convoy was coming with the caregivers, the Austrian government said these caregivers are not qualified according to the Austrian law and will not be deemed as caregivers, and eo ipso you will be even more deemed to be providing illegal social service. In Slovakia, this was solved kind of easily, in the sense that in the COVID, when our centers had problems with the staff being ill, there was the requirement for the caregivers was lifted, saying that the caregiver doesn't need to have this special training. It's sufficient to have the some kind of a short training by the center, maybe let's say that 12 hours kind of introduction, and this was enough. And what we were able to somehow, I'm not saying secretly, but not that publicly, sneak into the law, was that this will not only be applied to the crisis, the COVID crisis, but also to the Ukrainian crisis. So even if the convoy is coming with the caregivers, you need to be aware on the conditions in your country, whether these caregivers will be usable in the sense of the providing of the social services. If not, there is a way how to do it, in the sense that you are just renting the place and these people are just helping each other. Yeah, but if you are a social services institution, of course, these are another points to be considered, and it's better to think about them ahead instead of us when we provided hope to people from Ukraine, and then at the end we had to say, well, this is not possible. And thanks be to God that then the Germany stepped in and accepted them. And my last point is maybe to Victoria. It's not your people that because they are coming from Ukraine. It's our people because they have disability, and many of us, it's for many of us that's our family members, children, siblings, and we are deeply thankful for what you are doing.
Thank you, Lukasz, also for speaking, I think, on behalf of all of us, to Victoria there. Thank you very much. So to conclude, well, as usual, we have more questions than answers sometimes around these. I think one point is that most people with disabilities still continue to live in Ukraine, often very difficult circumstances. And that's definitely something that we as individuals, everyone here, but also at EASPD as an organization, will be looking at trying to find some solutions there. And our Secretary General Maya was in Ukraine earlier this week discussing with partners there on what to do. And on Monday at 5 p.m. there will be a Facebook Live session where she and maybe a few other people will be talking about their experiences and what they discussed in Ukraine earlier this week. So Monday at 5 p.m. on Facebook Live, we will share the link with you afterwards. But still, many people are leaving the country or are trying to leave the country. Sometimes it's not always the same. And what works, what is important, I think proactive individual commitment really makes a difference. We heard the speakers here today, and without them, not much really would be done, or to much lesser extent. So we really need to count on people with, people who are trying to find social solutions to this crisis, and to some extent not waiting for your public authorities to act, because if we do that, then nothing will happen. We've been also trying to work as EASPD with different public authorities, also with the European Commission. And the main response that we get is when people arrive in our country, then we will look after them. But of course, people won't, that's not enough for people who are trying to find safe space, or not for many. So I think that's something that needs to change also on the side of public authorities, and we're speaking with the Commission around that. Lukasz also talked about the recognition of the qualifications of staff who are with these groups, and the European Commission have recommended to member states to facilitate the recognition of these qualifications from Ukraine much more faster. So maybe that can find a solution. At least it's a push from European level for member states to do that. What we need is coordination in some ways, not too much structure, not too much, let's not make it heavy bureaucracy. But at the same time, we do need coordination. We need that local level, we need that national level, and we also need that at European level, because this is a real cross-European crisis. And so therefore, that's why EASPD is trying to set up these, or is setting up these regional offices in 6 European countries, because we need people on the ground who can help us with this coordination. But also for that, we need to be able to finance it in a proper way. And therefore, we're all also looking for donations. Everyone is looking for donations. So we don't want to take away from others also. But if you have a bit more spare cash, then please help us out, because we're trying to organize this coordination. And of course, that comes with a cost to a certain extent. Then public authorities are playing catch up. In some countries, it's a bit easier to maybe go ahead and then they'll catch up later, like what we heard in the Netherlands to some extent. Not, of course, it takes bravery, but I don't think it's the same in every single country, where you can't always do that without public authorities. But we do need public authorities to catch up rapidly. And so we will also be working on that at European level for the EU to make a say on this. And then last but not least, it's not always about inventing new services from scratch. Often it's very practical services, practical things that are needed, not that complicated to organize and practice once your mind is set on it. Using existing services, extending existing services, mobile services, hotlines, housing, all these types of things already exist. It's just about making them available for people from Ukraine who can come and do that. That's a bit of conclusions from us. We will hear more from us on Monday at 5 p.m. with Maya. And of course, we'll continue to work hard on trying to find solutions for all of us here, and in particular for our Ukrainian friends. Thank you everyone for joining. We will share this session with everyone afterwards. Thanks a lot, and especially to the speakers and to our Ukrainian friends. Thank you.